Greetings, honored guests, senators, premier, minister, dignitaries, and friends. Welcome to the Black Cultural Center for an important Emancipation Day Roundtable with Senator Wanda Thomas Bernard. This program today is being broadcast live on Eastlink Community TV and of course streamed as well on the Black Cultural Center's website. We're more than pleased to have you join us on this historic day as we commemorate Emancipation Day. Today we held several events to commemorate this special day that holds such an important message about the African, Nova Scotian, and Black Canadian communities. This morning we had an Emancipation Day proclamation by the Premier of Nova Scotia and the Minister of African Nova Scotia Affairs. We also had a commemoration from the National Historic Sites and Monuments Board of the Jamaican Maroons as a historic event of Nova Scotia's history. This afternoon, we were able to celebrate at the Canadian Immigration Museum at Pier 21 with a remarkable exhibition on slavery in Canada that will tour around our country coast to coast for the next 5 years to tell the remarkable story of resilience and understanding of slavery. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are Mi'kmaq, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We also acknowledge the presence of people of African descent in our province for over 400 years, and we honor and offer gratitude to those ancestors of African descent who came before us on this land. My name is Russell Gross. I'm the Executive Director here at the Black Cultural Center, and I'm so glad to welcome you here for this special occasion as we commemorate Emancipation Day. At this time, I would like to turn the program over to Senator Wanda Thomas Bernard, who's going to lead and moderate a roundtable discussion today. Senator Bernard hails from the community of East Preston and is Nova Scotia's senator. And of course, as we call her here in the community, our senator. She was very instrumental in bringing to life the commemoration of Emancipation Day through a bill that was placed in the Senate in 2021. So just a few years ago. And ever since then, we've been commemorating Emancipation Day on August the 1st. Joining her today, she has 3 other senators that have graced our presence here: Senator Moody, Senator Clement, and Senator Gerba. We're more than welcome you here to our shores here of Nova Scotia as you have an important discussion. Senator Bernard.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you very much, Russell. Thank you for hosting us here. It's wonderful to be here. And as I look in the audience, I see the Premier, the Minister, our High Commissioner. I see many folks who are with us this morning, many who were also with us this afternoon. Many will be with us this evening when we leave here. We have a hard stop. When we leave here, we're going to the Apex 50th anniversary event in Truro. And the reality is, if you've heard the rumor that we don't sleep, let me tell you it's true. We don't sleep. We don't need sleep. We survive on the energy that we get from our communities. Maybe that's not true. Well, we're delighted to have you here. And we want to talk a bit about some of our work and how that work ties with what we're doing with Emancipation Day, why we've all gathered. But before we do that, I'm going to invite my colleagues to introduce themselves and actually to tell you why they chose to be here. They could celebrate Emancipation Day anywhere in the country, but they chose to be here with us, to join us here in Nova Scotia. And I think we'll start at that end and just move down. So Senator Clement, if you would start first, please.
Bonjour, hello. It's great to be here. I'll say Nyawa, which is hello in Mohawk. My home community is Cornwall, Ontario, and it is on the traditional unceded territory of Mohawk people of Akwesasne. I am here because of Senator Wanda Thomas Bernard. In the Senate, we have a tradition. When you are appointed you are walked into the Senate and you choose a godparent, a senator there before you to walk with you as you enter that chamber. And I chose Senator Wanda, your senator, but our senator too. And so I feel connected to her and to where she lives. I am also the first Black woman mayor in Ontario. So I was the mayor of Cornwall, Ontario. Yes. And the first Black woman mayor in Canada is, of course, Doreen Lewis. And her name has been on my mind for years. I love it when I get to say her name out loud. And so those are just some of the reasons why I'm here with you in Halifax, in Nova Scotia, on Emancipation Day.
Thank you, thank you. Senator Dr. Moody.
Thank you. And hello, everyone. So for me, I chair the African Senators group within the Senate of Canada. We are a group of 7. We were 8. We've just recently lost a member who aged out, which was sad for us because we are so few that we pull everybody into our community as much as we can. And we spoke as a group about how we would celebrate Emancipation Day. And we thought that we would ask Senator B if she could organize for us here in Halifax a meaningful experience and that we'd all turn up. For me, a meaningful experience, frankly, is celebrating the role of the Maroons here in Canada. Being a Jamaican of Jamaican heritage and born and grow there, frankly, everything I learned in school about the Maroons, their role in Canada, their role in Sierra Leone, and some of the national heroes that we grew up in Jamaica, were being celebrated today here in Halifax. So for me, it was very personal, and I wanted to be here to celebrate with you.
Thank you so much. I'm here because I'm the only one Francophone in this room. Maybe, no. I'm here because I'm from African descent, born in Cameroon, and I'm the chair of the Progressive Group, which is the group where I am with my dear sister, Senator Bernard. Frankly, I'm here also because I think the slavery is our story, and we have to tell it to every Canadian because this is our story. That's why I just tabled, I have to say that because I just tabled in the Senate the bill to recognizing also the National Immigration Day, because we all came from somewhere and we helped building this country. So celebrating this Emancipation Day in Halifax for me was no way I can skip to be here. Thank you.
And thank you very much thank you all very much for sharing, for being here, and for all of the work that you do. You know, one of the things that I think people may likely find surprising, but even when there are issues that we feel are pretty important and pretty critical in our community, sometimes it takes some convincing of our colleagues to have that understood. Even for those of you who are at the museum, I talked about that in terms of the barriers that I faced in terms of bringing forward the legislation to even have Emancipation Day recognized. So we're marking 190 years since the abolition of slavery, but we are still dealing with the impact of enslavement of our ancestors. We're still dealing with that impact. We're still dealing with the trauma. We're talking about, oftentimes we hear people talking about multi-generational wealth, and in our communities, we're often talking about multi-generational trauma. And we don't even understand sometimes where the trauma is coming from. And so it's so very important. It's so very important that we engage in work. So as senators, we investigate, we represent, and we legislate. And one of the things that we investigated on the Senate Human Rights Committee, Senator Gerba and I are both on that committee, but we got support from our colleagues in the African Canadian Senate group. One of the studies we did in the past year was looking at anti-Black racism, sexism, and systemic discrimination in the Canadian Human Rights Commission. And I'll tell you, I can tell you where I was when the news of that broke. And I remember thinking, this is a story that we have to unpack more. And I brought it to our Senate Human Rights Committee, and there was resistance. Why should we be studying this? Should we be studying this? And I'm thinking, well, why shouldn't we? We must study this. And it took a lot of negotiating. Let's call it negotiating. Took a lot of negotiating. We've handed out a handout, an infographic that we put together in both official languages, just highlighting some of the findings from that study. One of our reasons for doing that is that we don't want that, and any of the studies we do, we want those studies to roll out into communities so that they're not just sitting in our libraries or sitting in our offices collecting dust. Even as an academic researcher, I never want to do research that's collecting dust in someone's library. I want research that will lead to change, research that will lead to action, research, quite frankly, that will make a difference. And so when I think about why are we talking about this on Emancipation Day, why is this important for us to be recognizing on Emancipation Day? For me, it's about recognizing that there's still much work that needs to be done. That until all of us are free, none of us are truly free. And as long as one of us is hurting, then all of us are hurting in some way. Yeah. So it's recognizing all of that and just being aware. Yes. Being aware of the reality of and the everydayness of racism, the systemic nature of racism, and that some days it feels like for every step we take forward, someone said a step backwards. I'd say 10 steps backwards. Because there are so many barriers and there's so much resistance that it takes all of our energy to remain resilient and to continue the journey. So I'd like to, one of the things that I'm often asked is, so how do you keep going? And I'd like to ask my colleagues, I've never asked my colleagues this, but what drives you and what keeps you going as you fight anti-Black racism in its many forms and in the work that we do in the Senate? Who'd like to start on this?
Yeah, can I just talk about loneliness for a minute? And in this context of this report, which deals with the federal public service, civil service, Senator Wanda was talking about committee rooms. So in committee rooms, we interview witnesses and we review legislation, make amendments, propose amendments. And the civil service is there to support that work. They send public servants. And it is still a lonely place, often, for Black people. I might be the only Black senator in that committee room. There might be one or two people that work for the federal government in those rooms. And we see each other, right? Mm-hmm. We always see each other. When we walk into a room, we know who's in that room. We look for faces that look like ours. And so that is very much a big part of why I want to represent wherever I am. And why I'm interested in this report, because I know that there are civil servants, black civil servants out there that are struggling, that are feeling lonely, unheard. And I want to be part of, the solution. I want to be able to say, I see you, you see me. Let's work together. Let's try and find solutions together. And that keeps me going on the hard days. It's a little less lonely when I see other faces like mine and I know that we have work to do. That keeps me going.
Yes, thank you.
So I can take from there, talking about being lonely. I still working I still doing this because it is important to have your place somewhere. Representation matters. In my former life before the Senate, I was involved in business, and I started the first manufacturing company in Quebec. The first black woman to own the factory and to have our own, skincare, hair care produced in Canada. So I was, so I was alone, being alone in entrepreneurial field, you have to fight. You have to still fight for everything. With bank, I have a Scotia bank somewhere. So with, you have, someone asked me, a bank one day asked me when I was seeking for the loan, have you ever managed this kind of amount? Can you imagine? They don't ask this question to white people when they're going to ask for the loan. So that's why I decided, I accepted to go to the Senate, because I think when you are at the table, your voice will count. So that's why it's important to still trying, and fighting.
Thank you, thank you, Senator. Senator Moody, just before you speak, I just want to say that we did not have the capacity to offer any bilingual services for this trip. And so I said to Senator Gerber, was a little nervous, and I said, consider this your summer English immersion. Would you agree with me that she's doing very well?
Yes.
Because in the Senate we don't need to speak both. We have translation, so.
That we could have done as well in French. But I would just add to these comments to say that one of the challenges we face as parliamentarians is bringing to the parliament the face, the voice, the perspective of Black Canadians. When we have committees, as was referred to before, there are very few organizations, Black organizations, that get invited to witness. There are very few organizations that are part of the mainstream, the networks that are able to come and give witness. So we have made it a commitment as a group that we will work to increase that database, to increase access, to bring voices to the Senate, especially our playing field, that we can influence, so that Black Canadian voices are heard and perspectives are heard. But I think the reverse is true. Many Black Canadians don't know what's happening in the Senate and that we're there. So we have a role to play to make sure When I joined the Senate, one of the first things I did was chaired a committee, a workshop, that looked at what is the state of diversity in the Senate. And that work led to more work that we're building on very slowly. It is painful how slow it is. I spent 25 years in healthcare. I was a neonatologist at Sick Kids. That was my background. And you see the immediate impacts of your work. You make a medical decision, you fix a life, or you don't succeed. But there's an immediate answer. We have been talking and strategizing and maneuvering to make change for years now. And we need to keep at that work. That's what keeps me going. Because it's a lot more entrenched, it's a lot more difficult, intractable than I expected.
Interesting point. Let's open it up. Look, you came because you wanted to talk with us, so we want to give you an opportunity to directly engage with us. And so if any of you have any questions you'd like to ask us, we'd be very happy to answer them as best we can. Senator Moody made a really interesting point, and my youngest grandson often makes this point. He says, Nanny, you think people know what senators do, but most people, quite frankly, don't know. Did I tell you he told me this when he was 11? So any questions you have? Yes, go ahead. Do we have a microphone for the audience? Or not? No? I'm asking this of the Eastlink folks. No? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I just like to stand because I am born from here, but I live in Toronto, and I know this lady because she go to our church. She come to our church, our First Baptist Church, with Pastor Gibbs, and we are the oldest Black Baptist church in Toronto. And I have a question because I know I am dealing with racism and discrimination, and I have called their human rights. And what I got from them, and what I told them, they did not want to answer my question, but they asked me the person name where I work. Soon I said that, they didn't give me no more information. But because of the person I am, I had to dig further. So I dig further. So I am a stewardess at our workplace, so I know the law. So I am clearly, and I understand, so I am dealing with an issue with them, and because of the way my dad brought me, it's like never stray away from the truth. The truth will always set you free. So they are saying something that I did, and they're saying that they had a recording. So I'm questioning them, so why are you recording me? Right? So they didn't answer. So I had a support person there who is studying to be a lawyer. So the director that managed the building come in and ask him to leave the property. So he had to leave the property or else they would have called the police to escort him off. So I told him, no, you go, I'll be okay. So this is what I'm dealing with, but like I said, because of this grant that my dad brought me us, I'm now going straight away from the truth. So I told them, if you don't do a polygraph, the union don't do a polygraph, you will see me on TV with a polygraph. I did tell them that. So he said to me, we're gonna suspend you for a day. So I said, if I did that, suspended, to me, that is a dismissal. So I said, can I go now? No, tomorrow. So I laughed. I said, okay, that gives me time enough that I was going away on the 19th anyway. I said, that give me another day, because I know my sister gonna call me for something. Another day to do a runaround, and that's exactly what happened. So they said, where you going? Oh, I'm going back home. Where? Nova Scotia. So where? I said, I'm from Halifax, Dartmouth, the biggest black community in North Preston. So they said, what are you gonna do? I said, I'm gonna party. And which I am. I am having the humongous time, but I try not to show my teeth, but we can't help it because that's how we are. So now they are, well, I'm away, so, but the gentleman that was by me support, he's keeping in touch with me and letting me know what, and I told him, I do not want the president of the union or the lawyer of the union to tell you nothing, that this happened to me, not that. So we going, so I just want to tell you guys, if it's the truth, stay to it. Do not back away. If you back away, that means it wasn't the truth. So this is what happened then. I will see when I go back, but I know what is it going to be. So I just want to let you know.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing. We're sorry that you're going through that, but it sounds like you have a process and you're strong. You're going to make it. You will. Yes. Anyone else?
I would like to speak, but you don't know if this is a safe place.
Yes. Yes.
Because I am going through an issue. I work for the provincial government.
Yes.
I am off due to stress and discrimination. But there's no support when you're up there. There is no support. So, yeah, there's a lot to say, but I won't. But there is a matter to go through right now. I see the premier here. Welcome. But I can tell you, when you're a black female, I am in management. There's no one to turn to. And during COVID, I worked for the justice. I worked during COVID. Kept it nonstop, kept the courts going. Yeah, there's so much I could get into, but right now, they want to deny my sick leave. I support it, but it's hard. They can tear you down.
Yes.
When you have no one to go to. I enjoy my job, I enjoy where I work, but when you don't have support and you're standing alone, it can tear you apart. But I thank God for who He is. I thank for His strength. But we need more representation in the government. We don't have it. We need it in senior management, which we don't have it. But it is a struggle to get there. It really is a struggle. And unfortunately, we've got children and grandchildren who, in this community, who want to come back and build a community. Why should they leave?
Yes.
You know, sometimes you can't get a job because your address, if you're North Preston or East Preston or Cherry Brook. Sometimes the address where you live, your resume goes in the garbage.
Wow.
But when you change your address, you know, there's a lot. And am I speaking up? Will I lose my job today?
No, you won't.
I am struggling now, and it is, it's sad. It really is, but hopefully things will change, and I'm going to stick in with it to make it change.
Amen.
And you stick with it. You know, one of our recommendations, so there's a very clear division between provincial and federal. So as senators, we don't deal with provincial matters, and the two stories that have come so far have been provincial. But it doesn't, we hear you, and we hear the pain, and we hear the struggle. And one of the recommendations that we made following the study was that there needs to be a modernization of the Employment Equity Act. And one of the problems with the employment equity legislation is that the Black experience is a part of the visible minority experience. So on paper, it looks relatively good, but when you disaggregate the data and look specifically for the Black Canadian experience, we don't see it. We don't see the numbers. And not just about bringing the numbers in to our various organizations and government departments, but it's also about how do you help people stay in those jobs, and how do you create opportunities so that they can create opportunities for advancement within the jobs. We're only starting to see a few changes with that, and there's room for a lot more, right across the country.
So I think the other thing that came out of the study was that we ensure that we take steps to ensure that victims of discrimination have access to a human rights system that is fair and effective and timely. And what I'm hearing, as Senator Wanda pointed out, we are federal, not provincial, but we heard in that study a lot of very similar themes. And so one of those recommendations definitely would apply across Canada at all levels of government. We need our individuals to have access to fair, effective, and timely place to go if they encounter discrimination.
And people need support when they're going through these kinds of processes. I mean, one of the problems that we certainly identified was that people don't have support.
Yeah.
And when cases take years to settle, that means people are spending years going through trauma and being re-traumatized.
I want to thank you both for standing up, though, and saying that out loud. So I'm a legal aid lawyer. Yeah, and I still, yep. And I still practice very, very part-time. I don't do federal work because there would be conflict. But I did represent people before the Ontario Human Rights Commission. And I can tell you that from a legal aid perspective, we are distressed by the dismantling of that commission, just as Black people are standing up and taking up more space, by the way, and saying we want to be in safe spaces and we want to say the truth of what we're experiencing. And in Ontario, the Human Rights Commission is just bogged down, lack of resources, so people who are going there to try and have their voices heard are faced with what you're saying. And in the federal context, I can't tell you how many times I'm approached by Black people working for the province and the federal government saying, we're not happy in our workplaces. We just want to do our job. We just want to put our skills to good use and be useful, and we're not getting anywhere. And so there's certainly people are speaking up more and more and doing what you are doing and standing up. So we need to find ways to support people in doing that and hearing you, so that we can take those voices into other spaces that we may be in. Thank you.
I think having forums like this where people can come and speak if they want to. I'd like to talk about that idea of a safe space, though. Yeah. Honestly, I don't believe there's any such place for us. There is no safety. But, there's a but. We need to have brave spaces. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage for you two to stand here and so no, it isn't a safe space, but it's obviously a brave space when you can stand. And if we remember nothing from the Maroons, let us remember their courage.
Yes.
Right? They were brave in the face of adversity. They were beyond brave, honestly. They were fearless. And when I feel afraid, I remember them. I remember how they fought, how they refused to be mentally enslaved and physically enslaved. So let's remember that. We haven't heard from this side of the room at all. So is anyone over here who has a question or a comment you might like to raise? Minister Gross.
Thank you. Just want to simply say this, that in terms of what we're going through, our religious and stuff and whatever, number one, there's always, go find an advocate. There are always people out there willing to listen, that are willing to work with you. something else that's very important, and I stress this and I can't stress this enough. When you have elected individuals in roles, support them. Support them. Don't say they're not going to do anything for me. Support them. That's what we're there for. We're there to help, we're there to support. And I just urge you to do that. Sometimes we say, well, nothing's changing. Things are changing. Do you see the change here today? Do you see that we look for symbols? Things are changing. No, maybe not at the pace we want it to, but things are changing, and there are folk, there are elected officials out there that want to advocate on your behalf. We don't know. So please, don't be reluctant to come and request our assistance and our help. Today has been a great day. I recognize we've got a long way to go, but we got to start somewhere. And you know what? Step by step. I see some change, and I do see some change, and I see some progress. Thank you for the opportunity that I get to serve you. Take care.
Thank you, Minister Gross. And from where I sit and what I see, as a member of your constituency, I think you're doing an outstanding job. That's my experience. Yes, Crystal, go ahead.
Yeah, I was looking at your key findings and looking at anti-black racism complaints being frequently dismissed. And I'm wondering what the numbers are in terms of how many are submitted, how many are dismissed and outright just ignored, and how that compares to human rights commissions within the provinces. Is there a systemic problem across the board?
That's a really good question. Our study did not, so we don't have jurisdiction to study individual provincial human rights commissions, so we don't have that comparative study. If there are any young and upcoming academics in the room, I think that would be a wonderful research topic for someone to take on, because it's one of the things that we heard from witnesses when we were doing this study is that the places where one would normally get funding to do research, they're not funding research into human rights issues. So the human rights issues themselves are not seen as sort of researchable topics that will be funded. That's a problem. That's a problem. But I think that, you know, I love students. Anyone here a student? Put your hand up. I think that's a study that I would really encourage a student to take on, because it's the kind of thing, and it's the kind of work that we need to do. And as academics, I think we need to be encouraging students to engage in research that really matters, and not research that's just sitting on someone's desk. But that's a question, that's a researchable question for someone.
I wouldn't just leave it with the academics, I would also leave it with the lawyers and let them do the research too. Because
The
there's
lawyers?
legislation that they need to understand. And, you know, if you're not a human rights lawyer in this country, you bloody well better become.
Tell us how you really feel. So, and that's part of the problem as well. There aren't many lawyers that are spending time on human rights issues. You know, and again, it's not seen. I mean, let's face it. Let's face it. We live in a capitalist society. So money drives things, and human rights issues don't attract a lot of money, right? So that's part of the problem. So it's all interconnected. It all ties back to capitalism. And I was thinking about, I think it was Russell, I'm not sure where Russell is right now, but I think it was Russell in his remarks today at the museum, and he talked about the business of slavery. And the business of slavery was really capitalism. and capitalist greed. And just as we're continuing to address the legacy, the mental enslavement, we're also continuing the legacy of capitalism that's driving things in our country. And so we can look at that. We can maybe see things a little differently. You know, as we're sitting here at the Black Cultural Center, and I'm thinking, you know, across the street we have the Kuma property, and they're trying to become the economic hub for the Black community, and they will get there, but they won't get there on a capitalist yardstick. They're going to get there on an Afrocentric model of cooperative economics, but only if we support it, only if we make it happen, right? So we have a lot of work to do, to make things different, to make things better, for the future. I feel very blessed that I live with my grandsons and their parents. You know, we're a multi-generational household. Every day I get to hear these boys, and what they don't know is that every day I worry about their future. I don't tell them I worry, because then they'll worry that I'm worried. But you know, we owe it to them, to our children's children and their children. The indigenous people talk about 7 generations, and we need to start thinking in that way as well. Like, what's the legacy we want to leave when we're no longer here?
I would comment for the previous question, although we don't have any data at the provincial level. What I can comment on is in June of 2023, questions were submitted to the clerk of the Privy Council, order paper questions on the call to action on anti-racism, equity, and inclusion in the federal public service. And the responses to 2 particular questions you will find interesting, I think. One is that the data provided on employee feedback indicates that more than a quarter of employees felt that they had been victims of harassment, but took no action. More than half of those who took no action did so because they felt it would not make a difference. And the second interesting finding was around half of employees who indicated that they had been victims of discrimination took no action. Over 60% did so because they did not believe it would make a difference. So what we're hearing is a lack of faith in the system that's supposed to be supporting individuals in our public service. And I don't know how broadly that extends across the country, but one would suspect that there may be similarities.
And I also have to add that things are changing. I agree with the minister. Having a minister in charge of African affairs here is excellent. So maybe we need the same in the federal government to have, you know, yeah. So I have to congratulate the Premier to make this changing. We need to be...
She's staying.
No. She has to stay here. No, I'm not in the government. I'm not the minister, the Prime Minister of Canada. So I think they have to look at what is happening here, what we are listening to here, and what has been doing in Nova Scotia. I think we need to see more like this in our country.
I know we have to wrap up because we have to go to Truro. So, any last words? Any final words you want to share with the audience?
All these findings, we've heard them many times. racism, discrimination. The most important thing is the recommendation. How are these going to be, those of us that make a change, what's the chance of these recommendations being adopted? If they're the one that's going to fix most of the problems. These racism, all these are everyone's been through them with color. I've run a business almost all my life. Going to the banks, talking to business people. We all have a problem because the question we're asked is not asked by white people. When we walk in the bank to get a loan, the stupid question they ask us, they would never ask them. You know? So, but action is the most important thing because we can come back 10 years from now, 20 years, and the same issues will. We have kids now who are born in this country. I'm an immigrant from Jamaica.
Yeah.
My sons are all Canadian. They should not have to go through what I went through. I'm an immigrant. This is their country. So the human rights issue should not affect them in any way because they're Canadians.
Yeah.
It should not be, color is very Chinese, black, white. That's neutral. That's what it is. You can't change that. But how are we going to make kids are black? They can't be anything else. You know, so we got to find one or two key things to change this and make sure it's implemented at your level because you're at the top. And it starts at the top to come down. You can blame provincial, but you are the key element. When you do something at the top, it comes down to the next level. So I want to know, how are you guys looking at these key adopting? These are things that you have experienced yourself. We have to put a time limit on this thing to be adopted now.
Yes.
Not next year, not the year after, now, because they continue to grow.
I think the unfortunate thing is that as a Senate, while we can do a study like this, we don't have control over implementing recommendations. So that really goes to government. But once we table our report, we ask for a response from government. One of the things that we commit to is continuing to ask the questions about the recommendations. We continue to advocate for those recommendations to be implemented, but we don't have the power ourselves to make those changes. But what we do have is hopefully some persuasion and influence, and we try to use that to the best of our ability, and we use whatever processes that we can, like, you know, having a response tabled and then following up with the response that we're given to see what we want to do next. And our committee, the Human Rights Committee, Senator Gerber and I are both on the Human Rights Committee, and we're doing that now with another report as well, where we're not happy with the government response, and so we're going back and we're trying to meet with the ministers to try to move forward with the recommendations that we made in that particular report. So those are the types of actions that we can take. So we take whatever actions we can. I guess that's the bottom line. Yeah. You'll have to be the last question.
Can I just jump in? Just to respond to you directly, and I fully endorse what Senator Wanda just said, but I want to come back to what the minister said, that there has to be representation at every level. Yeah. There have to be black people in the police, in the fire, in the paramedics, every level. And until we have proper representation at every level, we're always going to be fighting barriers. But when people are sitting in all positions of power where decisions are made that represent the face of Canada, that's when we're going to get the recommendations implemented, because it's going to affect the people that are sitting in those positions. So we need to support black people everywhere, in every position, at every level, and then that to me is real change. And in the meantime, we're going to continue to do, as senators, what we can do within our power, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
Recommendations include an implementation plan.
we're not able to do that.
You're not able to do that. Time-wise?
So those are things, so we could only, those are totally outside of our control. However, one of the things that that we were able to do with this study was, one of the recommendations was that there be further study. And one of the things that I'm secretly hoping, maybe it's no longer a secret if it's televised. I want our committee to do more work in this area. Because I think that these findings suggest to us that there's a bigger problem here. We know that.
How do you hold them accountable if you could do a study and another study and study the study and like, but what's the end result? At what point do you stop doing the studies and
When we get the actions that we want.
I can maybe answer.
Yes?
If I can just answer to that, is that sometimes it's long, but it's always happen to have some results. I can take the example of Islamophobia. One motion was stable to, we studied also the Islamophobia in Canada. But before the study, there was a motion, and the motion the motion made possible to have the Islamophobia representative in the government of Canada, for the Prime Minister to appoint someone for the Islamophobia I don't know how
Commissioner?
Commission. So we have this the same recommendation here to establish a Black Equity Commissioner. There is some way to do the recommendation, but still we have we have to call the minister. We have to remind, even though the minister are changing every time, and the prime minister can change, but the study will be there, and the senators are there for until 75 years. So I think Senator Bernard is still fighting for that. Maybe one day. Thank you.
We'll keep fighting. We just keep fighting.
Yes.
Keep fighting. We do have to leave. We have some transportation that's picking us up. So I'll ask once more, colleagues, any last words from any of you?
So merci beaucoup.
I want to say, oh, go ahead, Magda, sorry.
I just wanted to say thank you. Your representation is really important. For me, I experienced a lot of racism growing up in school. I was streamed, I was pushed out of school. Now I am a student with Senator Bernard, and never in my life did I think, like you were talking about your children, I was one of those children who come from immigrant family, refugees from Africa, and never did I think I'd be sitting here with Black Nova Scotians and all of our diaspora coming together and meeting, and then seeing 4 Black women senators talking about racism.
Thank you.
Even people are asking questions like, what are we doing? Just the fact that you are here is doing something for our spirits. I see children here. You matter, your representation matters, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Magda. That's probably a lovely note to end on. But as we wrap up, I want to say thank you for showing up today. Thank you for being here. As we were driving over here on the Halifax-provided public transit bus, we were thinking there wouldn't be anyone here. And I said, well, if we have to, we'll have the conversation amongst ourselves. You know, we don't stop, right? But you're here, you came, and I sincerely want to say thank you. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. We appreciate you. And I'm so delighted to have my senator colleagues here.